Hi guys, welcome to your weekly dose of inspiration to live healthy and happy. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that this topic is something that resonated with you, but it's not a problem that you deal with too often. However, if you are out in the real world, you definitely at some point have to deal with difficult people. Unfortunately, as human beings, we are not perfect, and it's really important and helpful to have a little toolbox to deal with people that are not always pleasant. Sometimes these are people that we actually have to deal with on a daily basis, and when it's unavoidable, we need a few, I would say, pointers or techniques to help make the situation a little more bearable and maybe even improve the situation or the relationship, depending if this is somebody that you're close to or not. It might be a colleague, it might be someone in your family, it might be a friend, it might just be somebody that you interact with on a daily basis for, whatever reason, your life and habits bring you to deal with this person on a regular basis, and it's been a source of stress. So let's get started. So I have 5 tips, and I've tested the 5 of them over and over again, and I found that they've been really helpful, and they've helped me deal with people, even people I would say earlier in my life in particular, people that were like authority figures, if you will, and it was a really tricky situation to have to deal with these people, but at the same time keep my self-respect and not be always stressed out about having to deal with them. So the first tip is actually a question that you should ask yourself, and that, it might sound really obvious, but do you really have a choice in dealing with this person or not? Sometimes we keep people in our life and just out of habit or out of obligation, or I would say almost it's kind of a made-up obligation in the sense that maybe it's a family member, or maybe it's a friend that you've known for a really long time. This person has been in your life for a really long time, and so you're kind of on automatic pilot, and in your mind the backstory is, well, I have to deal with this person, they're a family member, they're a friend, I mean, they're going to be in my life, so I just need to deal and endure. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I think you need to take a step back, and even though it's something that's maybe a little bit scary to ask yourself if this person really needs to be in your life, and do they need to be in your life now? Maybe you can take a bit of a break, and I actually have another video on this, which I will put you'll see a little eye icon on the top there, and you can check that out, because that's also something that's maybe not always obvious to deal with in our lives. Sometimes we have people that kind of step in and out of our lives as well. So be honest with yourself, give yourself time to mull it over, think about it, get some perspective, and if it's somebody that's really close to you, it might not be an easy situation. You might want to not necessarily break up with them in a, how can I say this, in a really obvious way, like I never want to speak to you again, but sometimes there can be subtle ways to step back from people in our lives and to engage with them a little less, and sometimes they can take a bit of a hint, and if they don't, then that's a whole other conversation, and then you can watch the video on if you need to take a break from somebody. So point number 2, so if you really do have to deal with this person, there's something you can do, and this might seem a little bit woo-woo-y, but for me, basically, it's a bit of a psychological exercise, if you will, that I like doing to mentally set myself up for success for the interaction that I'm going to have with this person. And you can call it whatever you want. You can call it a ritual, you can call it visualization, but what I like to do is kind of close my eyes for just like a minute or two and just really make a conscious decision to, this is the woo-woo part, like protect my energy. And basically you can call it whatever you want. It's just to kind of create this psychological emotional shield around yourself, which you can actually visualize this while you're doing the exercise prior to interacting with this person, and you can even kind of remind yourself and visualize it discreetly while you're dealing with this person. And it's just basically imagining that you have a shield. Like I like to imagine this like kind of white light around me that really can protect me from any negativity that might come my way. And I find that it helps. I find that it really helps whether you visualize something like that, or you just make the promise to yourself that you're not going to let this person get to you. And I will admit that I have made that promise to myself. It doesn't necessarily always work. Some people just know how to push your buttons. So we are human, we have emotions, we have an ego, and that ego can flare up sometimes when we have to deal with difficult people. So all of these tips, like there's nothing guaranteed. You really have to do, like, it's trial and error. You have to find what works for you. Maybe one technique will work with one person in your life, and it might not work as well with another. So you really have to go with how you feel it and with what works for you. So this has worked for me. I would say about 90% of the time. It's really helped me stay a little more chill, if you will, when I am interacting with somebody that usually can get on my nerves or just knows what to say to irritate me. So I find that making that conscious decision and setting an intention before actually being with that person, it can even just be like, even if you're interacting with a phone call and that person does get to you just by phone or email or whatever, like make that little promise to yourself, set that intention to say, whatever, I protect myself energetically and I'm not going to let that person get to me. So I find that very helpful. So once you're actually with the person, remind yourself that how other people treat you, how this person treats you, is a reflection of who they are, not who you are. And it can be easy to have the ego get on the defensive and to feel really personally attacked and take it personally and feel hurt or angered by what the other person is saying to you. But really how that person is behaving and what they're saying to you, it might be about you, it's really a reflection of who they are as a person, and I guess maybe what they've gone through in life. So I find that's a really helpful reminder when you are dealing with somebody difficult. It could be somebody you've interacted with once, I don't know, like customer service person that's just really rude. I tell myself, I don't know, maybe they're having a bad day or maybe they don't know any better. So it's not to necessarily excuse difficult people or excuse bad behavior, but I find that it helps the ego get a little less flared up, because often what's going to happen when we deal with difficult people is that our ego feels attacked and then we'll go into defense mode. So when you remind yourself that this person, that's their shit, pardon my French, but that's really their thing. And however they're interacting with you, yes, I think we all deserve respect. So if it's really something that's it's a major issue, then there might be a conversation that needs to be had. But just remember that however somebody treats you, somebody you know, somebody you don't know, it really is a reflection of who they are as a person. So in that case, you can kind of detach yourself from the situation and say, well, kind of sucks to be you, poor thing. Don't say that to the person. That's not going to be helpful. But say it to yourself internally and just think that, well, whatever, you know, that's who they are, and I choose not to engage in that. So speaking of engaging, always remember, even in in the moment when the ego starts to flare up, you have a choice in how you react, and you have a choice in if you decide to engage with this person in the negativity or whatever it is. So easier said than done, obviously, because when you're dealing with somebody difficult, as I said, the ego can get flared up and emotions can arise quickly, and all of a sudden we're completely unconscious and unaware of what we're doing, and we might say something that we regret. So that's a practice. It's really an exercise you have to do kind of every time that you have to interact with that person. Setting an intention prior to being with them will definitely help you stay a little more present, stay a little more conscious when you have that interaction with them, and then make the decision. It almost like, what I find is when I set that intention before interacting with the person, is it creates a small space, and where that small space is between what they say to me and then how I react, that's where I decide if I engage in that negativity and if I want to create, you know, whatever, a conflict or a confrontation or whatever it is. So with time, that space gets bigger. At first, it's like there's no space. The person says something and you react to it immediately. But with time, when you set that intention, you have that little fraction of a second where you say, you know what, I don't want to engage in that. I don't want to stoop to their level, or I don't want to step into that negativity, it's not worth it. So you have a choice. Remember that. And the more you remind yourself of that, the more it'll become more of an automatic reflex with time. So this is not the easiest one, but it's have a conversation. And that might seem scary. And as I was mentioning earlier, I've dealt with some difficult people in my life that were actually authority figures, whether it was bosses or people that were just older than me, I had a lot of respect and admiration for, and then something kind of shitty happened and I was like, well, I feel like I was kind of treated unfairly and I kind of couldn't let it go, and I knew I would have to interact with this person on a regular basis, and I said, well, I think the only solution is talking to them. So I know you can probably just think about this and probably maybe start to feel a bit anxious. It's not easy. It's probably easier to just avoid, dealing with this person, or try to convince yourself that, no, it's fine, it doesn't really bother me. But if it really does, you have to do something. So obviously there's different tips now that you have, but sometimes a conversation is unavoidable. So when you do decide to have that conversation, obviously it's important to be well prepared if you want that conversation to go as well as possible. How that conversation goes isn't just up to you, because you don't know how the other person will necessarily receive what you have to say. Obviously, this is kind of like human relations 101. You don't start just by like pointing to the person and attacking them and saying you did this and you did that. The trick that I've learned anyways is make it about you. Say, when you say this, it makes me feel this way. You might say something like, well, I'm really, really sensitive. And when you say that, I'm sure you have good intentions, but it upsets me. And then I feel kind of crappy, or I feel like I never meet your expectations, whatever it is, whatever the situation in your case is in particular. Think about it, maybe even write it down before, so that you come prepared, because those kind of conversations, they can escalate. Their ego might feel attacked, and then they might be even more difficult. You never know how it's going to go. Be wise, like use good judgment in that. Like for me, as I said, there's a couple of times where it was like bosses or the boss of a boss, so that was not an obvious situation. So it's really, in French we say like put on, like mettre tes gants blancs, like put on the white gloves, and like just handle with care. Be very, very careful of the words that you use and all that. So, but sometimes that's what needs to happen. It's a conversation. If it's somebody that you don't know that well, but maybe you interact with on a regular basis, it could be a cashier somewhere or whatever, and you find them, they're kind of always rude. Sometimes it's just like a little, are you okay? Like you don't seem to be having a good week, or something like that. And sometimes just a little hint like that might kind of allow the person to just like wake up for a second and say, oh yeah, maybe like I've been in a bad mood, like I have something going on in my life, but I probably shouldn't be, speaking to people that way. Maybe the person will totally like not get it, and that's fine. It'll just go over their head. Once again, that's about them. It's not about you. But a little trick that you might want to try. Obviously, you're not going to get involved in the huge conversation about your relationship with the cashier that you deal with like once a week or something like that. So once again, use your judgment to know what's the best approach for your particular situation. And the final tip, and this might be even more difficult than having a conversation, is have compassion. So it's not about letting other people walk all over us. It's not about making excuses and letting people behave however the hell they want and being disrespectful. But once again, how that person is treating you is a reflection about them. Look, it's possible the person is just a complete asshole. That's completely fine. So I have a very foul mouth during this video. Apologize. But yeah, I mean, it is possible that the person's just a jerk. But often it's not. Like, there's a story behind why the person is behaving a certain way. And like I said, if it's a cab driver that's a bit rude or something like that, like, you never know what struggles people are having in their life. And it can be easy to forget if you're kind of like, it's kind of smooth sailing for you in your life. It can be really easy to forget the difficulties that some people might be going through. So when I would have to say, when I'm dealing with people that I don't really know, like let's say somebody in customer service and the person is a bit rude or whatever, I usually try to tap into compassion for that person, because there probably is a reason why that person is behaving that way, and I don't really want to spend my energy in starting to have a conversation with them. So I just choose, I kind of like mentally say, I just send love. I just send love their way. And I feel like, once again, when you have that mindset, people can feel those little subtle shifts in energy and in mindsets. The other person might even detect that. I remember Oprah saying that the ruder the cab driver, the bigger tip they gave him, because she figured, well, he's probably just having a really bad day or has like a shitty life or whatever. So that's up to you. I know it can be tricky to do, and once again, it's finding that balance between you don't want to let people walk all over you, but sometimes it's just not worth spending a lot of energy, and I just send love your way. And once again, say that mentally, because the person will think you're rude if you start actually saying that. And yeah, and just kind of like move on and just figure like whatever, that's their thing. So I hope these tips are helpful. Obviously, dealing with difficult people, it's not fun, but it is unavoidable. And you might have even been that difficult person at some point. I know, I'm sure I have. And once again, I would hope that if that was the case, that somebody would approach me with that toolbox and know kind of which tool, which approach to take with me, depending on the relationship and the situation, to try to, if you will, disarm the situation, or just kind of make me realize that maybe I'm not behaving properly. So let me know if you've had any examples like that of really, really tricky situations. For me, this is something that I've worked on quite a lot, because I've had opportunities quite often in my life to deal with difficult people when I was younger too, just starting in my career, and it was not obvious at all. And it's something that we have to deal with throughout our life. So we might as well find tools to make it a little bit less stressful, and to become kind of experts at dealing with difficult people. So let me know if this was helpful. I wish you a wonderful week. I love you very much, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.